we want to welcome to the program Ariela Nix. Hello, Ariela. How's everything?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well, man. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be on the program. So, looking at your background, you're born and bred in New York City, and I know New York City is the mecca. It's not just the mecca for basketball, and is also the media capital of the world, but professional wrestling has an interesting background in that area. Just tell me, what was your upbringing like, and how did you get introduced to the world of professional wrestling?
Well, I was born and raised in the Bronx, so, part of New York City. My dad was a huge wrestling fan, so I just grew up watching with him since I was, 4 or 5 years old. So I've been a lifelong fan, literally, and we used to just tune in every week, and, more I watched it, the more I got into it, and just the love kept growing over the years.
Wow, that's awesome. What were some of your favorite wrestlers growing up?
All-time favorite always will be Shawn Michaels. I would say he's the reason I really got into it too. Like, seeing him first wrestle was just amazing. I loved Bret Hart too. I know everybody always says Shawn or Bret. I always like both. I always lean on Shawn, but Bret Hart is another one of my favorites. I love Macho Man. Sensational Sherry is another favorite of mine. Coming into a newer time, like CM Punk was always one of my favorites too. Going back, the Ultimate Warrior was another favorite. So I like a lot of the old school guys.
You mentioned some very important people, Ariela, but you didn't mention the man from the dark side, The Undertaker. Did you like The Undertaker growing up?
I did, yeah. Who doesn't love The Undertaker? And he had a legendary career, to say the least. So, we'll miss him for sure.
Yeah, definitely one of the great performers of all time in the business. I want to stay with New York City for a moment. You grew up in the Bronx, so of course, in the Bronx, they're known for the Bronx Bombers, the New York Yankees, and of course, there's the Giants and the Jets and the Knicks, and then the Nets play in Brooklyn and things of that nature. But I want to ask you specifically about Madison Square Garden. It's the world's most famous arena, and there have been a lot of great wrestling matches. Have you had an opportunity to experience live wrestling event at the Garden, and if so, what was it like?
Oh, yeah. My first show was Survivor Series 96 there at the Garden, and I always consider the Garden home just because it's I've been to so many different, besides wrestling, I got to do extra work at the Garden, so it was a dream come true just getting to be inside the venue, getting to see them put the show together, and actually getting to experience it on a deeper level as opposed to just being a fan and being in the crowd. So I've been in the Garden plenty of times, and it's just, I smile every time I even walk by and go in it. I love that place so much.
Yeah, it's been a lot of great memories that have been made at that famous arena right there. You mentioned that you had the chance to experience Survivor Series 1996.
96, I was just a kid. I was in the crowd with my dad, very excited, and it was just surreal, just to see, that feeling of everybody being so excited. New York crowds were one of a kind, so everybody was just so hyped, cheering and booing whoever they wanted, and it was so amazing. It was so many years ago already, but just being there for the first time to see my first live event was crazy.
Sounds crazy to tell you. It was nothing like a New York crowd. Now let's fast forward a little bit. You had the fan experience, but now tell everybody about your experience. What were some of the production techniques and the values that the production techniques that you learned, not just from the talent, but any of the production crew members?
I didn't really get to work with production directly, but you get the chance to kind of just sit in the venue while they're putting the rings together. You can watch them going over their matches and coming up with storylines that they have a promo. They're in the ring practicing the entrances and stuff like that. And you could they let you walk around and you just kind of as long as you're not in the way type of thing. So getting just to see that was just so cool, and how the show comes together, because you watch it on TV and just everything is so perfect, and it's oh, that's so cool. And it's you don't realize how much work and how many hours it takes each time they go on TV. So getting just to see that and just, how it all comes together is so cool.
Indeed, it is awesome. I've been to a lot of wrestling matches, and I tell everybody, even if they're not a big fan of it, I always say it's a once in a lifetime experience to check it out. I want to ask you still, you grew up in the Northeast, so territories were very big in the world of professional wrestling. You had the Northeast was the WWE, then you had the Mid-Atlantic states like D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, Philadelphia, Baltimore, places like that. That was a little bit more NWA, later WCW. The Southeast Georgia, places like that was more WCW, and then you had the Dallas-Fort Worth area, which was a world-class championship wrestling. Did you have an opportunity to watch any of the other territories during your years growing up in the Bronx?
I did watch some WCW. I was mostly a WWE person. My dad really only watched that. Like, I think he watched like old NW, but that was like before I was born and stuff. But so I did watch some WCW, like especially when it was coming into like the Monday Night Wars. But other than that, I didn't really get to watch a lot of different types of, like now older, I've gone back and seen some different things just to like, get the experience of like, oh, like, this is what I didn't see when I was younger. But at the time, I really mostly just watched WWE.
Also big on the Northeast in Philadelphia's ECW. Did you have a chance to watch any Extreme Championship Wrestling?
Yeah, I did see some. I never went to a show, but I did get to catch some of that. And it was funny. I was actually watching some with friends the other day. And it was just like, it's crazy how different it was compared to, like, say, WWE. But I did watch a little bit of it back then. But like I said, I was mostly just a WWE girl.
Okay, fair enough. So let's move along now. So you had the full fan experience through your father, and you guys had bonded through professional wrestling, and you became a fan continuing as you grew up. And how did you get involved in the world of professional wrestling?
I started going out to like independent shows in the area, and like the independent show, like what I love about it is like, it's more intimate. You get to meet a lot of the wrestlers, and if you want to buy their merch, things like that. And you get to really interact. WWE, unless you just happen to see them going to the parking lot or something, you don't really get to meet people. So I really love that experience. And then, let's see, with one show I went to, I became friends with Jay Lethal. And we stayed in touch, and he was like, hey, how come you never train? Like, you have a really good wrestling mind. And we talked about it for a while, and I was just like, I don't know. Like, I always loved wrestling, but never thought I'd be, want to do it. And he's like, you should try it, and, just go for it. And then he introduced me to Amazing Red, who was my first trainer, and I started from there.
Wow, let's stay with that first training session for a moment. What was that experience like?
Wow, it was just like, I was like, what am I doing? I went in, and it was just like, you learn like the basic, like how to roll was like the thing I learned, and I couldn't do it. It was just like, okay, maybe I'm making a mistake here. My blows were so bad, and I remember I was sore for like 4 days after that first class. So it was just like, the wrestlers make it look so easy on TV. Not that I thought I was going to be like a super athlete, but I was like, wow, this is even harder than it looks.
Yeah, man, I've watched a ton of wrestling documentaries, and they always talk about a lot of, even your current professional wrestlers, they always talk about those rough years and that first day of training. They always talk about that they're sore. They're always sore, learning how to take bumps, and just definitely going through that process of getting into the professional wrestling business. I want to stay with the business for a moment. You mentioned earlier about learning how to roll and take bumps and things of that nature. I was watching a documentary one time, and it says that when a wrestler once said, when you get slammed on the mat, you never get used to it. Have you still gotten used to it?
Yeah, no, I can agree with that. To a degree, it's weird. You learn how to do it properly so that, so you stay safe and stuff like that. But it's not a natural thing that you do. So even now, like, it's still like, okay, bump, you got to do it this way, you got to do it that way. It just because you've been doing it for so long, but it's something like whatever they said in the interview that you watched, that it's really, you don't fully ever get used to it because it's not a thing that your body is supposed to do.
Okay, so now we go from the training process. What is a typical training like in a wrestling school? I know you mentioned that you take bumps and you learn how to land properly, but what goes involved? What else is involved in it as far as like a training regimen, maybe with weightlifting or running laps? What else is involved in this?
Usually, I mean, I guess every school is different, but like usually a class will start out like doing rolls, doing a bumps, like a routine drill that you just do warm ups, things like that. And then I guess it just depends on the class and what people want to work on, what the trainer wants to do, and everybody's experience level. Like some people have been training for years, so they'll do more advanced things, and then like the beginners that are just coming in, they might just focus on the basic stuff like the bumps and the rolling. The gym is very important, depending on your school. Some schools are lucky enough to have weights and stuff there that you can work out, but most people work out on their own, and it is very important just to work out outside as much of the ring as it is inside.
Okay, I want to stay just with the whole training process. You mentioned that Shawn Michaels was your favorite wrestler growing up, and Shawn Michaels was known for being a high flyer and being a daredevil, if you would like to call it, or aerial tactics. What's your wrestling style like? Is it similar to Shawn Michaels, or how would you describe your style of wrestling?
Yeah, no, I'm definitely not a high flyer. I'm the total opposite. I see myself more like technical brawling style. Like I just keep it simple. I just want to hit you, beat you up. I'm not fancy. I don't do a lot of flips. I don't do anything, crazy and fancy. And so many people can do a little 630s. That's not me. So I'm definitely the opposite. But just straight to the point. I want to brawl. I want to fight, beat you down, and very technical and just brawler style.
Describe your move set. I mean, do you execute a lot of suplexes, or do you, like you mentioned earlier, you do primarily a lot of brawling?
I'm in between. A lot of my signature moves are focused on the neck. I use a rolling elbow, a rude awakening neck breaker, things like that. Like a Ring to Saturn submission type finish. So I try to, a lot of my stuff is based around the neck. Just gotta beat them up and get them to that point where I can make them, either tap out if I use the Ring to Saturn, or just beat them up so where I can get the pin.
Okay, pretty cool. So now we talked about the training, we talked about your move set. I want to ask you, what was your first match?
Okay, so this is a complicated question, and I'll explain why. So my first match where, for me, I technically don't consider it a match just because it was a gimmick thing. I was a manager at a show, and then my client lost to this wrestler, Boris War. So because he lost, I was supposed to wrestle him. But the next show, I came out in sweat. I didn't even come out in gear, and we did a little 3-minute match where he beat me. So technically, that's my first match, but I didn't go into it kind of as a real match. It was just hey, it's a gimmick. You're going to do a couple of things, and then you lose. First technical real match, if I want to, if you consider it a real match, was against Deonna Purrazzo.
Did you win? I said, did you beat her? Did you win?
No, I didn't beat her. She won. It's okay. It was my first match,
Yeah. But that's common. Yeah, you know what? Because that's very common when I listen to a lot of wrestlers' interviews. The majority of them never win their first match. They never. It's rare that I've heard a wrestler say, "Oh, yeah, well, I won my first match." It's just weird. And when you said that, I was like, that's probably one of the few common things among professional wrestlers. They never win their first match. It's just, how long was it? Do you remember it?
It was about 8 minutes, something like that.
Okay, cool. Well, you mentioned that you work the independent circuit, so you definitely do your thing on the independent circuit. What are some of the promotions that you worked for?
Well, I currently train with Creative Pro Wrestling based out of Long Island. I've worked all over this. I was a former Pro Wrestling Magic Women's Champion. I worked with VPW. I was their former Women's Champion. I worked with Capital, now known as Catalyst, for a while. TVP up in Massachusetts. I've been lucky enough that I've been working a lot of places up and down the East Coast.
I'm looking at some of your titles right here. You were the PWM Women's Champion. You had a long reign as the VPW Women's Champion. Just tell me, what was it like just being a champion?
It's awesome. The promotion believes in you to represent their company, so I'll always be grateful for that. And I got to work with so many different people since I had that. Since I had the title for so long, so they brought in different people for me to wrestle, and it was great. I was honored just to be their champion. For Capital, I was their first women's champion, and I had that for over a year as well. So, always grateful that they saw something in me and they believed that I could represent their company for that long a time, and grateful for the people that I got to work with in that time period too.
Give me the pros and cons of being an independent wrestler.
Pros, you get to do what you want. You get to work with whoever you want that wants to work with you. You're not obligated to do anything that you don't want to do. I guess the con is, if you might not have a show every weekend, the money might not be there. Most people under a contract are making a stable contract, stable money every week. So I would say those would be the main pro and con of being independent.
As a creative team with the promotions that you've worked for on an independent level, are creative teams as vast and wide?
Not quite, not usually. The promoter and whoever his team is may have an idea, like, we want to do this story. They'll tell you what they want, but it's not usually as detailed. Especially independent promotions, they run maybe monthly or every other month. It's not like a weekly thing, so they have to keep those storylines going. And, a lot of independent promotions just kind of put matches together. It really depends on the promotion. Some have a lot more storylines, some don't.
What's your finishing move?
The Rude Awakening.
Oh, you mentioned in your moveset, you mentioned the Rude Awakening, and you like neck breakers and also the Rings of Saturn. Were you a big Ravishing Rick Rude fan growing up?
I did like Rick Rude. It was funny, it was one of my mom's favorites, and she didn't even like wrestling. She just liked him because she thought he was cute. So, every time he would come on, I would get her to, and that was the only way she could get her to watch wrestling with me for a little bit. So, I did like him a lot, and, it was like a move that not a lot of people are using, so I just wanted something different as well.
Ariela, thank you so much once again for taking time out of your busy schedule to be on the program. Tell everybody, where can they find you on social media, and if you have a website, let them know that as well.
Cool. I have Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Ariela Nix. My name is very simple. And if anybody would like to support and buy merch, I do have a website. It's arielanix.bigcartel.com.
You heard it from her. She's Ariela Nix. She's a professional wrestler working the independent circuit and entertaining and dazzling crowds from near and far. And Ariela, thank you so much for being on the program.
Oh, thank you.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning into the channel. Remember to click like, share, and subscribe. And thank you for watching.